Right, so as was breaking news yesterday afternoon, as I was finishing up my coverage of the remaining 8 crew members of the Madleen being kept in inhumane, unhygienic conditions and subject to mockery and abuse, all of a sudden it came out that they were being released. 6 of the 8 have now been released and have returned home, with the 2 remaining French nationals due to be released today, though due to the attack on Iran and the closure of Israeli airspace, that may now not happen. But the vessel was, of course, seized by Israel in international waters, an act of piracy, and they were taken back to Israel against their will. Therefore, they were kidnapped, and the details of their incarceration is coming out in more detail now that they have been freed. Most of them have. But along with their freedom has come an announcement, too, that a 3rd Freedom Flotilla mission will soon be setting sail, because they will keep going for as long as it takes to shame Israel, raise awareness of their war of starvation, and seek to break the siege of Gaza. Unlike some nations who seem to be afraid of Israel and are currently blocking aid and aid convoys inspired by the Madleen, such as Egypt, the Freedom Flotilla Coalition will not, it seems, be stopped. Right, so as we know, back on the 9th of June, a week ago now as that was, the British flagged vessel Madleen, carrying 12 humanitarian activists, was intercepted in international waters roughly 185 kilometres off Gaza's coast by Israeli naval forces, carrying a token amount of aid, symbolic of breaking the siege more than any significant amount, consisting of baby formula and rice and flour and medical equipment and water desalinization tools. The Madleen had departed from Catania and Sicily on the 1st of June. Its purpose was non-violent protest and aid delivery to Gaza, spotlighting a blockade creating systemic starvation on top of the genocidal assault Israel were committing against Palestinian civilians. Israeli naval forces, backed by drone surveillance, radio jamming and even chemical dispersal, forced their way on board. The crew had their belongings confiscated, communications were shut down, and they were towed to Ashdod, where they underwent medical checks and were detained farcically under Israeli law, or what passes for it. On the contrary, this brazen Israeli act of piracy on the high seas, as it was tantamount to, constituted itself an illegal seizure of cargo and kidnapping of civilians, which is a pretty clear-cut, flagrant breach of international maritime law and human rights. When do they ever get applied to Israel? 4 crew members were deported pretty much immediately, including Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg. 8 of them, however, amongst them French MEP Rima Hassan and Brazilian Tiago Avila, were detained and incarcerated in prison despite not being guilty of any crime. They faced incommunicado detention, solitary confinement, Avila and Hassan having entered into hunger strikes before both were deported yesterday, 12th of June. 6 of the detained activists were finally deported on that day, but 2 remain held still. French nationals Pascal Morius and Yanis Mohamdi, who is a journalist for French outlet Blaze. They are expected to be freed today, June 13th. However, the situation with Iran has probably meant that's going to get pushed back. Upon deportation, Rima Hassan touched down in Paris to a roaring welcome. She spoke powerfully to the assembled crowds, highlighting the abuse she endured: forced cell phone confiscations, denial of legal representation, solitary confinement, being branded criminals despite remaining in international waters when they themselves were hijacked. Yasmin Akar, another freed crew member who returned back home to Berlin, voiced defiance. Despite abuse and humiliation, their commitment to Gaza remains unbroken, as she's vowed to continue the campaign. Akar went on record saying, "They kidnapped us against our will, brought us and jailed us for almost 4 days. They are breaching international law while occupying Gaza, and the international community needs to stop its complicity. They need to stop sending weapons. They need to send aid instead of weapons." Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Adding insult to the injustice, though, Israel has declared all 12 Madleen crew persona non grata. All of them are banned from Israeli territory for the next 100 years. More time than Israel has existed for, and frankly, having now started this war with Iran as they have, such a threat may end up proving to be a rather academic one yet. It's a political move, clearly a stupid one, given Israel have acted with criminality here, not the crew of the Madleen. It's a punishment for exercising humanitarian dissent in the face of genocide and starvation, rather than criminal conduct, so all 12 should wear that ban from Israel as a badge of honour. The Madleen mission was far more than a symbolic gesture. Its purpose was to export aid, from food staples to medical kit, into Gaza with collapsing infrastructure and widespread famine. Peaceful, civilian-driven and rights-focused, the project aimed to shine a light on what international observers are calling Israeli-driven starvation and genocide. The appalling treatment and abuse suffered by the activists underscores the cruelty of the interception and their subsequent legal treatment. From inside Gaza, residents celebrated the Madleen, seeing it, however briefly, as morale-boosting evidence that the world hasn't forgotten us. Though I would suggest that ordinary people of the world are the ones who haven't forgotten you, and will not forget you, because too many governments still clearly couldn't care less. And tokenistic votes at the UN, as we've just borne witness to again, are not going to end the abuse either. The Madleen stand galvanised solidarity amongst others too. The Samud land convoy inspired by it, setting out from Tunis a few days ago, aimed to do on the ground what the flotilla attempted at sea, break Gaza's confinement. The convoy has already encountered official resistance crossing borders as it has reached Egypt, having been welcomed to great fanfare as it passed through Algeria, Tunisia, and even war-torn Libya, where they gave them free fuel. But the momentum is unmistakable. Flotillas and land convoys are emboldening social and political protest. We can't have that. Resisting normalised siege? How dare they? Israel's interception and boarding a civilian vessel in international waters, forcibly detaining and deporting activists, tramples all over the foundational legal principles, from the freedom of navigation under UNCLOS to the prohibition of piracy and state-based seizure with force on high seas, the prohibition of arbitrary detention and inhumane treatment, and the collective punishment of the 12 individuals punished not for crimes, but for just being activists. By ignoring these laws, Israel demonstrates with impunity with which it is conducting the Gaza blockade. Upon returning to France and at the Paris gathering she attended, Rima Hassan issued something of an electrifying announcement, though. I have one word for Israel. The next boat is getting ready to sail. It will be called Handala, and there will be all the boats we need to break the siege. Yes, the third Freedom Flotilla mission is already preparing to depart, aboard the 18-metre Norwegian vessel Handala. Why call it Handala then? Well, the ship takes its name from a Palestinian cartoon character, a 10-year-old refugee who always stands with his back to viewers, his identity marked by exile, waiting to return home. His stance symbolises steadfast resistance, the refusal to forget exile until true return is possible. Handala, the ship, however, has already wandered several European ports, in Oslo, Stockholm, Malmö, Gothenburg, Berlin, and twice conducted solidarity missions last year, delivering both child creative art and political messages to raise Gaza awareness. Currently prepped in port, having weathered some logistical setbacks, Handala is being readied for another attempt to reach Gaza. This time it sails with the resolve and lessons of the Madleen behind it. Each voyage, boarding, stenography of detention, returns with statements. Greta Thunberg, Rima Hassan, Yasmin Akar brings global attention. These human narratives and testimonies penetrate international media, or indeed fill the void where said media leaves a vacuum instead, honouring Gaza's suffering, challenging Israeli policies, mobilising solidarity movements. Refusing to forget or forgive or ever stop trying to break the siege, they force a confrontation with the genocide by blockade narrative, the targeting of civilians providing aid, and the utter disregard for maritime and humanitarian law. The Madleen saga and the looming Handala mission continue to challenge and pose pressing questions for those refusing to answer for the plight of Gaza. Will world governments still passively accept Israel's piracy and kidnapping, and what may be to come on this next mission? And how many missions will it take to bring about a shift in that? Will human rights bodies pursue action for violations of maritime law? The Hind Rajab Foundation, for one, is certainly already doing that, but are they going to be it? Will activists continue to risk personal safety to shine a spotlight on this? The Freedom Flotilla certainly will. The Samud convoy and the March for Gaza are prepared to, certainly. Will we as observers allow Gaza to remain besieged by silence? Well, I certainly won't be. This story calls for moral clarity, it calls for collective action, to raise awareness, to challenge normalisation of colonial blockade, to show solidarity through political pressure and donations, or attending solidarity convoys if you are in a position to do so. What began as a symbolic act by the Conscience, attacked off the Maltese coast by Israel, followed by the Madleen, seized and suppressed as that crew has been, fulfilled a deeper mission. It pierced the veil. It shone a light on the siege. It elevated voices, inspired the Samud convoy, and rallied the world behind Gaza once more. Now, with the Handala prepared to set sail, the third Freedom Flotilla mission beckons us to choose. Stay silent, still, or stand together for some justice. The blockade has to end. The hunger must stop. The genocide must continue to be exposed. Let Madleen's seizure be our wake-up call if you're not awake already. Let Handala's expected voyage be your signal. Injustice must be confronted, not acquiesced to. As activists, governments, citizens, we all stand at a crossroads. Choose human rights over complacency. It's that simple. Choose solidarity over silence. Choose action over apathy. What the Madleen has also done, however, is shine a light on how little being British flagged means when you can just be hijacked and kidnapped, and the British government, well, they don't say anything about it, do they? What I discovered upon looking into that, though, was that British abandonment of British people and people under British protection when it comes to Israel was worse than just the example provided by the Madleen. The story goes a little bit deeper than that. So get all the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, sort of spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.